Hello, I finally got Big Goron's sword, but stuff still happened. So what's up? We're at war still. It's still happening. We're at war still. The United States and Israel are still at war with Iran, and Israel is still continuing their operation in southern Lebanon, essentially just eradicating neighborhoods to create a buffer zone. We're about 2 months into this war now, and it's a war. It's a war. They keep saying it's not a war, it's a war. The fighting between the US and Iran has largely boiled down into this blockade standoff in the Strait of Hormuz. It's bi-directional, blockading both sides. It's on or off, depending on the hour, seemingly, and depending on which untrustworthy nation's leader you trust, we're at war or we're not. But on the ground right now in Lebanon, Israel is sending demolition teams with, like, dynamite and shit to go blow up neighborhoods. Israel was like, hey, Lebanese people, evacuate your homes because we're going to be conducting some military operations there. And we care about your safety, so we want to make sure you're not going to be there. And then they blew up their homes. Like, they brought in bulldozers. It wasn't like oh, dang, we done accidentally blew up this house. Now we should do the due diligence of cleaning it up. No, they're bringing in bulldozers to just destroy neighborhoods. They're just wrecking it, even during a ceasefire. Beyond the immediate human impact, which is immediate and human, and therefore the most important, there's also obviously wide-reaching economic impacts globally. Here at home in the US, gas prices are averaging about $4.22 a gallon at time of recording. That is not the highest it's ever been, but it is spiking, and it's also not the same kind of spike the rest of the world is seeing. The US is positioned, like, physically pretty far from where all this is happening, and also the US is a pretty big oil producer. In fact, the Department of Energy is bragging about how we're now producing more oil than certain countries that recently were bombed. Like, their oil fields were bombed, but we're beating them. We're producing more than them. Losers. So yeah, like, gas prices are going up here, but it's not as bad as it could be, and it's gonna get worse. Like, brace yourself for that. You don't need to freak out. Nothing's going to change overnight, but it basically means fuel prices are going to, at best, stay where they're at, and inflation is likely going to tick up over the next few quarters. There's a bottleneck right now in the Strait of Hormuz for oil and liquid natural gas. Things are just not moving, at least nowhere near the capacity that they need to move to handle the supply chains that we currently have. So especially in Southeast Asia and some places in Europe, they are trying to renegotiate how they're going to be getting all their fuel needs. How? It goes beyond fuel and natural gas, too. There's so many layers here. Obviously, the energy impact to the global economy is a big deal. But here you've got a dangerous shipping route, and shipping vessels aren't thrilled at the idea of going through an active war zone. Insurance for those shipping vessels is going to go up through the roof because of the active war zone. And the business value of delivering another Labubu when the potential liability is our freighter got sunk, it's just not there. So we've got the markets going like... That was me being markets. Oil fields in Iraq and Saudi Arabia and UAE are not operating at max capacity right now. Some of them have massive infrastructural damage. So even if we just, like, magicked away everything that's going on in the Strait of Hormuz and Israel and Lebanon and Iran and the US and all of that, the damage has been done, and we're just going to have to ride this out now. There does not appear, to mine eye, to be an end to this war in sight, despite the White House constantly saying that we're near the end of it. I don't know what to say. We're just in a dumb conflict that didn't need to happen, and no one wants. And now we got to pay for it. It's the American way. Speaking of expensive and paying for it, let's talk about AI. Sorry. Disclaimer, as always, I'm going to interchangeably use AI, artificial intelligence, and large language model / LLM. It's just easier. I give up. A bunch of companies across all sorts of sectors are running into a similar problem with their AI investments right now. It's getting expensive. With every company trying to just cram AI into their workflows or their product offerings or whatever, ultimately, it's all going back to one of, like, 4 companies that are actually offering the models that are being used to do all this. There are exceptions, but largely you're going to have Google, Anthropic, XAI, or OpenAI be, I guess, Microsoft's. NVIDIA's kind of doing some now, but Microsoft's also kind of OpenAI. It doesn't matter. Point being, there's a handful of companies that actually have the sauce, and everybody else is paying for that sauce. Unfortunately, that sauce has some really expensive ingredients, like graphical processing units. So here's what's happening. When you use an AI system or an LLM or something, you use what's called tokens. It's a measurement of essentially how much computing this model is doing for your query. Functionally, think of them like tokens you put into an arcade machine. Put in the tokens, machine runs. If you want to do more, if you want to play more, you gotta do more tokens. And if you die a lot, you gotta buy even more tokens. It's a perfect analogy. So tokens are sort of the metric here, right? And interestingly, I'm gonna start by saying that tokens have gotten real cheap. As the years go on and we refine these systems and whatnot, we are getting a better return on investment. It is cheaper to run these systems. It's not cheap and it's not efficient, but it's cheaper than it was. So if token costs are going down, why are prices going up? It's because we're using more. It's the American way. A lot of things are the American way. Since tokens got cheap, companies use more tokens. And that's kind of just how AI is, right? It's not a good product. It doesn't really work well until you do it a bunch, and then it might work kind of okay. If you want to get the best results out of AI, you need to have the most compute power. And that rule is not going to change. So the upstream provider companies are the ones that are building or contracting out data centers to build out all the AI support to be able to run all of this, to be able to serve all of this functionality to the companies that are buying it from them. And so far, they've been hyper underpricing. They've been subsidizing the cost so that everyone's going to onboard to AI. And so now you've got companies and power users who have these subscriptions that were largely flat fees, $20 a month to get ChatGPT or whatever, $200 a month to get the supreme version, and like, I don't know, $150 a seat for corporate stuff. Those are made up numbers, I think. I might have gotten some of them right. So you pay your subscription, you've got access to the thing. Now you can use it as much as you want. Great, except that's the problem. And so they're switching from an access model to a metered model, measuring how many tokens that you're using and or how you're using the system at all to upcharge for certain types of queries. So everyone's using more tokens, and then now they're saying, hey, we were undercharging you on those tokens, which are cheaper than you thought, but you're using more than you thought, ultimately resulting in significantly higher contract renewal prices that are now coming due. So it's been, a few years of this now, right? And companies are now re-upping their contracts with these AI companies. According to aggregate reports of potential new contracts coming in from these companies, the suggested increase to the price of these contracts has been around 20 to 40% above the previous year price. Ultimately, with negotiations and whatnot, that price has come down closer to like 12%. That is still a huge spike. A 12% year-over-year increase in one of your most expensive contracts for software, that's rough, buddy. This isn't necessarily a complete inversion. Like, nothing has exploded here. But this is the beginning of the reality check. This stuff is expensive. And it's been heavily subsidized. It is the corporate version of Uber. Uber was super cheap and super approachable for a long time because it was heavily subsidized. The initial investments into Uber were used to reduce the amount of money that you were paying. They were covering a lot of the costs. Then once everybody got used to it and taxis were phased out in some places, price go up. So I guess in addition to using too much water and like driving up people's energy costs and plagiarizing artists and stuff, we can add predatory vendor lock-in to the list of reasons we don't like AI. Hey, thanks for being here. If you like this show, please like, subscribe, comment, that kind of stuff. It goes a long way. Thank you. That's all. Moving on. Hello, Albert Manifold. I am very sorry to hear that you nearly didn't get your appointment as chair of the board of the Anglo-Persian Oil Company. Oh, sorry, BP. I meant BP. Backing up. BP's been doing some bullshit. Last year, in February, they announced that they were going to roll back a whole bunch of climate initiatives. They were like, hey, everybody, bold new idea. We're going to increase investment in oil and gas, and we're going to remove our climate initiatives basically entirely. So BP has essentially scrapped their 2030 climate initiatives, and they've all but gotten rid of any renewable investments. And then they had some shareholder votes. So for the poors out there, sup, buddy? When you have money and you can own a lot of stock in a company, you get to sometimes vote on stuff that they do. We don't get to do that, but big boys do. And also, sometimes if there is a group that is an activist investor, they get a say. I'm setting the stage here, I promise. Picture this. The year is like last week, and BP is having a meeting with their shareholders, and they're like, hey, we got to vote on some stuff. Here are our ideas. Idea number 1, we're going to end our climate transparency. Idea number 2, we're going to move our investor meetings online. Idea number 3, Albert Manifold. That's the idea. The shareholders did not vibe with these ideas. They vibed a bit with Albert. We'll talk about him in a second. Essentially, BP went to their investors and they were like, hey, you know how we're not going to do climate stuff anymore? Well, now we want to stop talking about how we're bad for the environment also. As for moving their meetings online, the criticism there is it's getting away from the protesters that often show up at these shareholder meetings. Don't want to see that riffraff. So here's what happened. The shareholders said no to the first two. They said yes to Albert. We'll talk about him in a second. But they said no to the first two. BP needed 75% of shareholders to vote yes on the different initiatives because these were like special initiatives or whatever. And then they didn't even pass 50%. So not even half voted for it. Except for Albert, and we'll talk about him in a second. So what's going on here? Because BP shareholders don't seem like the kind of people that would care about this. So what's going on? After BP had made their original announcement about reducing their climate initiatives and reinvesting in oil, one of their investors, who is a quote activist investor called Follow This, filed a motion. They were like, hey, we want to put forth a resolution to basically require the board to be like, why is this a good idea? And how is this going to be good for us if like the oil industry is going down? BP was like, we hear you, we understand, dear investor. We'll talk about it. Some time passed. And then BP got back to them and they were like, hey, we're not going to talk about it. Actually, your proposal sucked. It was busted and we're not going to do it. We're not going to tell anyone about it. We won't vote on it. Why was it busted? Shut up. I don't like you anymore. That was me being the board of BP. Fun fact, Stuff Keeps Happening is just a long con for me to make a bunch of audition tapes. So, God, I am meandering on this one. Okay, focusing. Albert. So one of the big shareholders for BP, which happens to be an activist investor, was like, hey, explain yourself. And BP said, okay, whoa, never mind. Actually, no. That kind of pissed off shareholders. They're like, hey, we have a right to do this. Like, this is a thing that we get as shareholders. The right to demand a vote on things. As this is all going down in the wide world of BP shareholder drama, Albert Manifold becomes essentially the face of it all. He's the visible board member that's being proposed as the new chair while all this is happening. And so the time comes to vote, and our boy Albert gets just over 80%, which is enough to seat him, but is a massive anomaly. Board chair shareholder vote results. I don't know how to categorize that. They usually are close to, if not literally, 100%. Everyone's usually on board. But given all this bullshit, they actually got strife and pushback from their shareholders. This is not me saying that the shareholders of British Petroleum are suddenly climate activists, but at least half were not into completely about facing. Hey, you want to invest in beads? This is wild. This is wild. This is cool. An international team of researchers has amassed over 140 ornamental beads and decorative things made by a civilization over 15,000 years ago. 142 Natufian ornaments were discovered and analyzed. And here's the really cool part. These things are made of clay, and we found fingerprints preserved in the clay. The Natufian society is an interesting one. They're largely settled in what we now call Palestine, Israel, and Jordan, the southern Levant. But these people were largely a sedentary society, which is to mean they weren't nomads. They weren't just traveling around. They were largely in one place at a time when that wasn't really happening. This is before agriculture, like long before it. And we now have evidence that there were people of all ages, children, adolescents, and adults, seemingly using clay to make like rings and beads and necklaces and all sorts of ornaments. Arts and crafts. Before we even had agriculture, a community coming together, all ages, making stuff just because it's fun to make stuff. Have you played with clay? Prior to this discovery, the amount of relics that we had of a similar category was 5. And now we got 142 more. This changes the way that we think about cultural evolution in sedentary societies. It's rad. 15,000-year-old fingerprints. And so I ask you, dear listener, would you like to make some beads so that maybe in 15,000 years, some random guy might write a newsletter about our fingerprints? Lightning round. Beloved twink vampire Astarion from Baldur's Gate 3 is going to be getting a dedicated prequel novel. Here's the weather. A United States-based big game hunter was trampled to death by elephants while hunting antelope in Africa. It's pretty easy to avoid. And finally for today, someone reportedly attempted to shoot members of the Trump administration at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. He had guns and tried to rush past security into the ballroom to shoot people, but didn't get to the ballroom and didn't shoot anyone. It's really embarrassing for the White House, but otherwise, like, it's not really a big deal. I'll say that the general response was either complete apathy or disbelief, and I genuinely don't think it matters which camp you fall in. Who cares? Like, it doesn't change anything. And of course, they're now saying this is why they need to build the ballroom at the White House or whatever. It's all very silly. That is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments below where you are going to host the White House Correspondents' Dinner next year. My name is Endeavorance. We'll talk again soon. Take care and be well.